Hello, everybody. A very good evening to all who are joining from India. And if you're joining from somewhere outside of India, good morning or good afternoon. I am Bidisha Bhattacharya, Growth Manager of Stack.me. Welcome to the second season of the Stack.me Academy Masterclass on the importance of building and sustaining a reading habit. Stack.me Academy is our initiative to ensure those who are on the platform and also creators around the world as well get to be better at things they are focusing on. For instance, writing, audio, podcasts, business writing, fiction, photography, illustrations, a lot of different topics that we are going to run our masterclasses on. So, if you haven't checked out our earlier masterclasses, please do visit our YouTube channel or Facebook page where you will find them all. With that, I am really excited to present our masterclass today with the founders of Project Bibliotherapy, Nitin Goel and Nandini Swaminathan, on the importance of building and sustaining a reading habit. Project Bibliotherapy is a startup by two curious lifelong readers, Nitin and Nandini, who quit the corporate grind to get people to read more and read better. They do this through the Readers of 42, their community of 100 plus members who want to invest in building or enhancing a reading habit. Members received curated reads daily, exclusive zines with handpicked recommendations, get access to the project's upcoming publications, and can be part of one of a kind experiences. Their 42 good reads of the Internet Zine has been showcased at the Jaipur Literature Festival, Spoken Fest by Kommune, the Bombay Underground Zine Fest, and the Bangalore Literature Festival. In this masterclass, Nitin and Nandini will be covering the importance of reading or why we read, their reading journey so far, and tips on how to read more and better through different ways. In addition to the same, they will be talking about the Readers of 42 and how it would help you build a sustaining reading habit. So without further ado, I will hand the floor off to you guys, and at the end of the session, we will have Q&A. So wherever you are following this masterclass from, please drop in your questions in the comment section. We've always tried our best in answering most questions in our previous sessions, so we promise to make that happen today as well. With that, guys, over to you.
Hey Vidisha,
Thank you for that introduction.
and it's a pleasure being here. Let us start with our favorite quote about reading. It's by Carl Sagan, and I would like to start by reading the entire quote for all of us. A book is made from a tree. It is an assemblage of flat, flexible pages, still called leaves, imprinted with dark, pigmented squiggles. One glance at it, and you hear the voice of another person, perhaps someone dead for thousands of years. Across the millennia, the author is speaking, clearly and silently, inside your head, directly to you. Writing is perhaps the greatest of human inventions, binding together people, citizens of distant epochs who never knew one another. Books break the shackles of time. A book is proof that humans are capable of working magic. Welcome to this session hosted by us, two lifelong readers.
Yeah. So, a brief introduction to start with.
Project Bibliotherapy was started on day one of the lockdown back on 22nd March 2020. It's been a long time since then. This week we'll complete 33 months. Originally, it was just a sanity project designed to just chase the lockdown blues away, one book at a time, on Instagram, sharing what I had been reading.
And then on Stack.
Then Stack came into the picture a few months later in June, and now it is a full time venture with one mission, nudging you to read more, read better.
We also run a community called the Readers of 42. So, the Readers of 42 is a one of its kind global community. It's for anyone from anywhere in the globe, of people from all walks of life, all ages, with one thing in common: the desire to build a reading habit and feed their innate curiosity. So, we serve our readers of 42 in three ways. The first is curation,
We also create stuff worth reading, worth your time.
and the third is experiences, where we host online and offline experiences, one of a kind ways for you to appreciate the joy of reading and get into the magic of reading.
And more on that later. For now, let's focus on the topic of this session,
Mhm.
the importance of reading, building a reading habit, and sustaining it in this day and age where distractions are everywhere. So, this is us.
Yeah.
So, Project Bibliotherapy is two people, no more, no less. And we're just two nerds who decided one day to quit the corporate grind. I did that in 2017.
I
And
did that this year in March.
and we've been readers since forever, and we just want the world to be a better place with the magic of reading. A bit about myself: I followed the straight and narrow path, which is the holy grail of anyone who gets good grades in school: an engineering degree, a master's degree in management, job one, job two, well paying jobs, but not really satisfying. So in 2017, I took the plunge. I embarked upon a long, strange trip, which, if I were to go into, it'll take a lot of time. So I'll skip that. Long story short, it led me to starting the project on day one of the lockdown, and the rest is history.
Similar story here, except for the engineering and MBA part. I did go the straight and narrow, good grades part. Did my English literature, did my mass comm, spent about 10 years in the startup space, and also started my own blog called Sartorial Secrets. And while I enjoyed my stint in the corporate and startup world, there was something missing there. And I always knew I wanted to do something on my own, which is when Nitin invited me to join the project, and the rest is history.
And Stack has been an integral part of it. So, Project Bibliotherapy was one of the first accounts to be created on this platform back in 2020 when it was still called Scroll Stack. Well, thanks to Ritesh and the team, Bidisha, Karnika, Samir, all of them helped me at that point figure out the potential for converting a passion project into something which could be a potential career by reducing the friction between readers and creators. So since July 2020, Stack has been a home for all experiments which we've done so far, and there have been many. We advise you to check out our archives at leisure. And yeah, do let us know your favorite ones.
Yeah.
And now it serves as a destination for people all over the world to support us and join the Readers of 42, something which no other platform offers creators in India the option for people to pay via UPI, cards, and any amount in any currency of their choice.
So, a little about our reading journey and why we wanted to do this, because we're two lifelong readers. So, we've both been readers since we were just 3 years old, thanks to our moms. Both our moms are voracious readers, and they encouraged us. We would read for pleasure as well as knowledge and consume every form of reading that was possible for the past 3 decades and counting. And it's not just books, like we've been exploring books, magazines, comics. I used to read shampoo bottles, labels, and lyrics, billboards, bumper stickers, you name it. Like, you catch anything with the written word, and we've read it.
And this collage, this montage, which you see over here, is from the first ever post which we published on Stack. It's called 1 billion seconds plus a few million more. It's the story of our reading journey, and we advise you to check it out later.
Yep.
Also, When the internet entered our lives, which is a long time ago now, 25 years, we've been actively exploring its infinite shelves. We believe it to be the largest library known to humankind. And last year, we put together 42 gems which have been part of our reading lists by 42 authors in one zine, which we call the 42 Goodreads of the internet. It's a collection of all these articles which are available to read for free online, not just articles, web comics, blog posts, a ton of content worth your time, but they would be buried between tons and tons of other content which gets pushed every day. So we made it possible for you to access them with one click or a scan of a QR code. And yeah,
And this zine's been many places, as Bidisha said in her introduction. For more on that, you can definitely check out our archives because we've got a lot of stories around this zine.
and why 42, you may ask? Well,
This
it,
is why
it's the answer to the ultimate question of life, the
the universe
universe,
and
and
everything.
everything. According to the greatest book in the galaxy, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
Again, highly recommend picking it up if you love satire. If you, it's not a sci-fi book as popularly thought. It's actually a ton of humor, and yeah, please pick it up. It's awesome.
much thanks to the original DNA, Douglas Noel Adams,
The
for
author,
writing this book. And it he has been responsible for the project being where it is.
absolutely.
And
So, so now we come to uh, one of the topics that's the closest to our heart and why we did this masterclass, which is to talk about why building a reading habit is so important. So, the first thing, um, it's fun. I mean, we've been reading since we were three, and contrary to popular belief, books offer you a world that the visual medium really cannot. They introduce you to entire worlds within their pages. You can travel without spending a penny. You can visit worlds that exist only in an author's imagination. And a great book has the power to make you, understand and learn something new about different people and different cultures as well.
and it's great for your brain. So studies have shown that readers are a lot less likely to develop serious conditions like Alzheimer's and other conditions which affect your mind,
With your memory,
your
yes.
memory. The science backs it up because think of reading as a workout for your brain. Like you go to a gym to hone your muscles, to build upon your muscle mass, stay fit. Similarly, reading it stimulates your brain activity when you use your senses to read words. Remember little facts, characters, and plots while exploring another world through the words written by an author who might not even be alive right now. Create visual pictures of the words in your head, and thanks to that, you can be transported to any part in the world in history. You could be reading a book which is set in the medieval ages, or you could be reading something which is set in the future. It trains your brain to think beyond the box, to use a very commonly used metaphor, but it it's true.
Another reason to read, your EQ and empathy go up. There's a lot of emphasis on IQ in our society, but very little emphasis on on your emotional quotient and your empathy. And empathy comes from reading about situations, people, and cultures other than your own, which are not really familiar to you. And books open our eyes to newer ways of thinking in this way. Newer people, newer realities, whether it's a non-fiction book set in a different culture, whether it's a fictionalized version of something, it's a brand new perspective that you wouldn't have thought of before. And looking at different perspectives in the long run definitely builds your empathy. uh, Also, it boosts your attention span. So, I mean, in today's world, people when people's attention span is apparently, according to stats, less than that of a goldfish, smartphones and social media are the biggest distractors. We're all guilty of it. But when you read, your brain actually uses different parts of it. Your cognitive abilities, your ability to visualize things without, by turning words into pictures in your head, solve problems as well, when you're focusing on something that you're reading. So that's why we tell you to scroll less and read more. If you can see, that's our bookmark with,
Yeah, our chief message, newly minted last week.
yes, and debuted at the Bangalore Lit Fest.
And the fifth reason of many, we decide to limit it to five due to paucity of time, you become a better conversationalist. Talking to a reader, it opens doors to stuff which you never knew before. So, ever since things opened up last year in August, we've been interacting with a lot of people who have been readers, who want to be readers, who had been readers and want to get back to it, and ourselves as well. So many new things like have come to our attention, have come up in conversation which would never have come about. And it usually starts with somebody saying, I read this somewhere. And there you go, a
Yep.
fact comes up, and another reason to read more, read better. And these reasons so far have worked for us.
Yeah.
They worked for us throughout every stage in life, while we were in the corporate world, while we were in the system getting an education, which Nandini was lucky. I had to study something in which I did not really have much interest. It was just following the herd. So this has been a great way to escape and at the same time discover new worlds. And worlds tend to collide sooner than later. So, just a tiny example before we get down to it. I read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for the first time in my first year engineering, thanks to a fellow stack creator, Aradhya Akshat, Open Darbar, to check out his page. And I'd been reading that it's a collection of five books. It's called the Trilogy in Five. I've been reading the first two books on and off again and again every few years. But I read the entire series during the first phase of lockdown, and that changed a lot of things for me. It made me appreciate something which I'd enjoyed back in the day, but it added so many nuances to it going further. It brought me so much joy. And yeah, so that's one of the things which we highly recommend everyone. Don't think of reading as a race or a chore. Like, it hasn't worked for me every time I've sat down with a target or I'll read 42 books in a year, or 100 books by the end of my college time. Setting that target just puts unnecessary pressure, and each book is different. You could easily read 100 picture books in a day as well and put it out on Goodreads, but what's the satisfaction in it? So think of it more like, something which brings you joy.
Which brings us to the next point, which is read what interests you and brings you joy. So there are so many topics out there, and every person has topics that they're interested in. You could love music, you could love art, you could love chocolate, uh, literally anything under the sun. And there's a book, like we guarantee there's a book about it, or a book offering an interesting perspective on it. And that's why reading should be something that brings you joy. The learning that you get from it should be incidental, and it shouldn't be the sole purpose of reading.
And it's okay to not finish a particular book at that point in time. There is no guilt in leaving a book unfinished. You might return to it later once you've garnered some more experience, some more context in which that book will make more sense to you, or you might not never revisit it again, and that's fine. So Carl Sagan, he says that it's like he says it along with a lot of other people. Even if you read a book a week, you can only read a few thousand in your lifetime. In 20 years, you can probably read 1,000 books. And that's the number of books which are being published probably today as we speak all over the world. So, yeah, don't feel guilty about leaving a book aside for a while. You might come up and revisit it, like with Good Omens, for example. I first picked it up in 2015 or 16, read the first few pages, didn't really get into it, and then cut to 2020 and it introduced me to Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, which, if you see, occupies a significant number of shelves on in our little biblio cave.
Yes. And you can actually, if you find a book too intimidating, you can start with a few pages a day every day. I myself went through a reading slump in my life during the time when I was very busy with my work. And to get back into reading, I just did this simple thing. Just before I went to bed, I would switch off from all of my social media and my devices, and I would read one page. I started with one page, just one page. I would read one page of a book, and soon that one became two, and then three, and so on. And that's it. I mean, I would read every day.
Yeah, so just to sum it up before moving ahead, don't think of it as a race or a chore. Read what interests you and brings you joy. Read little by little every day. Make it a habit, a daily habit. And there are too many books in the world. It's okay to leave some aside
Yep.
and revisit them if the time comes. Or it's fine if it doesn't as well. And we also recommend spending a lot more time in bookstores and libraries. So, ever since things opened up last year, we've been exploring all the bookstores and libraries in our city, Delhi. And when we got the chance to travel, we started exploring the delights which other cities have to offer. And there are so many, and they are so, they need readers to visit them. We have stopped buying books online from that multinational corporation which dominates everything. Nothing against them, but we just want you to walk into a bookstore or a library, because when you're scrolling online for your next read, most often you'll just come across the bestsellers or the latest releases. Whereas if you enter a book which has like shelves and shelves full of thousands, maybe millions of books, you could actually walk around, take your pick, and there are people to help you.
Yeah,
There are people to point you, direct you, nudge you towards your next read.
absolutely. And if you'd like some recommendations on bookstores and libraries, you can also check out our Instagram. And another thing you can do while you go to these bookstores is to build your own little library at home, one book at a time. And what you see behind us is a result of that. We started when we were kids, preserved some of that, then rebuilt it last year, one book at a time, and this is how it's grown. And there is a positive effect of being surrounded by books, by physical books, because they remind you that you need to pick up a book and read. Just that visual of having books around you will kind of encourage you to pick one up and read it.
Out of sight, out of mind is less likely to happen.
Yep.
Also encourage you to explore the literary event scene in your city or even online. So, if you have the fortune of living in a metropolis, ton of things happen which go under the radar. Like a ton of activity happens at bookstores. So Kunzum is one of our haunts where they opened up in March
In Delhi.
in Delhi. They have 5 bookstores across the city. And at any point of time, there is an event happening or multiple events happening at their venues. And we were there yesterday at Sundar Nursery for a series
Suitable.
of conversations called a suitable conversation in beautiful picturesque settings with peacocks in the background. You
Yep.
hear some of the best minds discuss, talk about things, and you can eavesdrop in the conversation and take away so much from that. And move
There are also tons of book clubs. If you'd like to check those out, like there is a book club called BYOB, Bring Your Own Book, and they have chapters all over the country. So there are online meetups, there are offline meetups. These are ways to meet other readers, and in the case of literary events, to meet the authors behind the books, so you know the actual person whose mind this book came out of. And that's a very, very amazing thing. So we would strongly encourage both exploring the scene in terms of events and also checking out book clubs. Coming to the next point, so for us personally, whenever we visit friends or we visit anyone or there's a special occasion where gifts are involved, we gift books. And that's again because we figure out exactly what that person is into and we gift books basis that. And if you're visiting someone who has kids, we would highly recommend gifting books to the kids because there are such beautiful children's books out there as well. And starting them young, just like we started, is one of the best things you could do.
and for more recommendations, we put up a post a long time ago. We'll revisit it again. It's got 100 recommendations for kids from our childhood.
It's on our stack page, so do check it out.
Moving ahead, the internet. Like the internet gets blamed for a lot of things. Like it's supposed to be a cesspool of everything that's wrong with humanity. But the internet can be used for so much good if you just focus on that. Like this conversation would not have been possible.
Without the internet.
You can also use it to curate your reading list. Like as we mentioned earlier, it's the largest library known to us. Everything's available there. Just need to know what to search for. And it's also got the best search mechanism. If you type for something, if you're reading a book by, say, pick an author, maybe we'll do that in the interactive session afterwards. Just pick an author, Google them, and you'll come up with so much content, valuable content, which you would never would have discovered otherwise.
And speaking of the internet, social media is a huge part of the internet. None of us can live without it. This is happening on a social media platform. But we would suggest that, a lot of us are guilty. If we look at our phones and we see the amount of time in our settings, it says how much time we've spent on social. You'll be shocked. It'll go into 15 plus hours. Now, the idea is to shave off some of that time every time you find yourself going into a scrolling, frenzy. Why not pick up a book or pick up some long form content which is already on the internet? It could be an article, it could be something from a newsletter, it could be a blog post by someone who has a great point of view. Basically, it's the idea is to replace the mindless consumption with more mindful use of your internet because it can be a beautiful place as we've seen personally in our journey.
Yeah, and the internet has also made it possible for us to transcend form. So audiobooks, they also count as reading. Please, there's no high road where, a physical book is the only way to consume content. That was the technology of its time, which is great. But there are more technologies which can be used to enhance your experience. Like, for example, you could listen to the entire Woodhouse series narrated by Stephen Fry on Audible while walking, which is an advantage audiobooks have over regular books. You can walk and read at the same time. They count.
Another thing that's helped me personally and Nitin as well has been that after, like, when I come to know that there's this amazing new show on one of the OTT platforms, if it's based on a book, I first go out and get the book. I read the book and then I watch whatever that show is. And honestly, it makes a world of difference. It, like, there are perspectives in the book, there are ways of thinking in the book that you won't be able to see translated on the screen. So you can even combine your book reading with watching your favorite OTT shows, and the other way around as well. You can read the book after you watch something, and you get to know that it's based on a book.
So, this screenshot on our laptop is Stephen Fry from the Sandman series, which is the most watched Netflix show this year.
Yep.
And it's based on this insane graphic novel series written in the early 90s, which is considered to be the greatest graphic novel of all time.
It basically invented the genre.
The Sandman, and you could experience it in the form of a visual medium on Netflix, an oral medium on Audible. It's like a full cast audio recording, and
Dramatized, like, it's amazing. Should definitely check it out.
and you could also pick up the original source content and flick the pages at your own leisure and see what magic Neil Gaiman has created. So this is some of the stuff which has worked for us, and now we would like to welcome you to the readers of 42. So now that you've realized 42 means a lot to us, so that's what we named a community of people from all walks of life who want to either build the reading habit, or if they already have one, enhance it and feed the innate curiosity.
And yeah, so Readers of 42 is our community. It's very close to our heart. The picture you see here is actually from the last meetup we had a few weeks ago in Bangalore at a bookstore called Bookworm, with a whole bunch of our readers of 42. It was a guided reading meditation. Our mission right now is to find our first 10,000 readers of 42. We just reached 100 members last week, and it was an amazing feeling because it tells us that there are people in this world who would either like to get back to reading or, get into reading, and that's very heartening to know. They're all people like you, of all ages, anyone who would love to be part of the magical world that we spoke about initially in that Carl Sagan quote of reading and books.
So before time runs out, this is what you'll get at the moment: your copy of our zine, which has handpicked timeless recommendations from as old as the 1920s to 2021.
This is Azim.
And there are also a bunch of bonus content with podcasts, videos, other stuff to nudge you to discover an author and then dive into the vast world of content which they have created either online or in the form of books or other sources. A lot of them have newsletters where you can interact with them directly. We just want to introduce you to some of the people who've given us so much pleasure over time. And Azine Volume 1 is a great way to go ahead. Volume 2 is in the works, where The back end is being worked on this Telegram channel, which you see over here. It's called the Endless Reading Challenge. Over here, we share something to read every day at 6 a.m., noon, and 6 p.m. It's a private channel, your number's hidden, it's only visible to us, and you get a link to something. And it's all hashtagged, so you can search the entire archives at your own leisure. You also get access to our upcoming publications. We are working on 6 different publications centered around different themes, a wide variety, and these would be launched in the new year. And you get a year's free access to it, and also exclusive access to all our online and offline experiences in person as well as on the
Online.
internet.
Yes.
The highlight of which is something which we call the guided reading meditation, where a bunch of us gather around either in person or online and read without
Uninterrupted.
any distractions for an hour. It's just like your regular meditation, but you know, just have to tell your system that you could sit down in one place and read. We also are coming up with a bunch of partner programs where you'll get a bunch of stuff. So stay tuned,
Yeah.
get early access. This is
So, how do you join the Readers of 42? If this got you curious, so you visit our Stack Me profile, which is bibliotherapy.stack.me. Click on the support button, as in the screenshot given on the right. And as of now, while we get to 10,000 readers, we've kept it as pay as you wish, pay as much as you wish, because we like to keep access open to people all across. Like it could be college students, it could be entrepreneurs, it could be people like us who are still working in the corporate field. It could be anyone who would be able to pay as much as they wish. And right now, the rolling average is about 900 rupees. So once you do that, once you click on support, it supports UPI, net banking, cards, all forms, as we mentioned earlier. And if you'd like, you can leave a little note for us in there, which will show up on our supporters page. And that's it. You're in. You can expect a welcome email from us with all the details once you complete this process. And you can also follow us on our social media.
Thank you so much for listening to us, two readers, for almost 40 minutes now.
Yeah.
So, any questions, thoughts? And if you want to say hi, these are our socials. We welcome DMs anytime.
Yeah.
And we want to end it with this quote by P.G. Wodehouse, which he wrote in 1915 in his first Blandings novel, and which has been the motto of Project Bibliotherapy since the start. As we grow older and realize more clearly the limitations of human happiness, we come to see that the only real and abiding pleasure in life is to give pleasure to other people. Reading gives us pleasure, and we would love to share it with you.
Excuse me.
Hello,
Yeah. Yeah, we are
how are
on.
you?
We're on.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. It was a very comprehensive and clear presentation. And this is something that, a lot of us, I mean, I can speak for our age group in general, especially people in the corporate world, we are now looking for ways to move away from social media because it does kind of clog our minds after a point, and it does get distracting and not in a good way. So and that's where obviously people are looking for other hobbies to pursue, and reading is the best hobby to pursue, honestly. And which is where I mean, before I go ahead with a couple of questions that I have, Vijendra Mohanty, who's one of also our very early creators, has commented the metal shelf fist bump. So yeah,
Right
yeah.
back at you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's It's an amazing metal shelf and with lots of such amazing collection of books, including the Woodhouse collection that you have, which is also right now there in the slide as well. Woodhouse is a writer who sort of got me into reading when I was a little kiddo. So my dad was a big fan of Woodhouse, and I was kind of a Potterhead. So he didn't really encourage me reading a lot of Potter, but he was like, read Woodhouse. So that's where I got into, the satire, the comic, and I mean, even the way he framed paragraphs in general. I mean, even if I look at it from a grammatical point of view, it was just beautiful completely. So that's so I just have one question. You've spoken about readers of 42, and that you all have now started out with this guided reading meditation, with one already happening, which has already happened in Bangalore. So I have this question. There are not only readers in a particular language, right? Like not only reading in English. So there will be readers reading Marathi books, Bengali, Hindi, any other language books as well. So have you planned or have you thought about, I'm hoping that later on you all will be hosting larger workshops, online as well as offline. So have you all thought about how to kind of bring this thing in place where, there can be readers of a different language also coming in and sharing their thoughts about reading? Because I mean, as you say, emotions don't have a language, so does reading. It doesn't have a language. So anybody can be interested in any particular language that they're reading. So have you thought about something like that?
So we have given it a lot of consideration
Mhm.
basis the languages which we are familiar with, English and Hindi particularly for me.
And Tamil as well for me.
And I discovered a lot of my childhood books which were in Hindi. So
Mhm.
I have been revisiting some of them, and they are like familiar names, not just books, magazines as well. The Tink,
Champak.
the Tinkers,
Huh.
Champaks, the Chanda Mamas. And we were looking at, you know, converting or translating some of them into English and vice versa as well. It's just at the moment we were focusing on the top three things to get things going.
Mhm.
But once we have more s- bandwidth,
Yeah.
to use a corporate word, which we,
Unfortunate use of a corporate word.
but we would love to both expand our reading. So we have consciously picked up both translations on our Sundoku to be read shelves over the past 2 years. So this is just a little part of the Biblio cave. There are like more books and more shelves on all four corners.
Yeah.
And there's an entire section dedicated to books which are translations and which, as we read, we'll be putting them up, talking about it, because we can only talk about the books which we've read and which we want to read. And
Yeah. Hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. The second question that I have is, you are focusing on a very niche topic. It's not a very common topic that people write on, regarding social issues or anything as such, which would any which ways garner a larger community. People would discuss about it. But you've managed to have 540 followers now on Stack.me and 2,700 followers, if I'm not wrong, on Instagram. So something has really worked well, and I hope it'll be just multiplying and the numbers will keep increasing. Um, my question is, now that you have started meeting these readers, of 42 or the community, what is their feedback? How are they reacting to bibliotherapy, Project Bibliotherapy? And what are their expectations from Project Bibliotherapy?
So it's been pretty overwhelming and amazing meeting all of these people, including authors as well. The response has always been, I mean, so far, fingers crossed, the response has always been positive.
Yeah,
It's also been one of surprise because it's not something, like you said, it's not something that's very commonly talked about.
yeah,
And the readers that we've met so far like the whole idea, and we've had times when we've actually gone to literary events or organized something, and people have turned up who we didn't know that they were actually, following what we do. But
Mhm.
they would come up to us and tell us how it's kind of impacted them, or what they've kind of gained from it. And that's something that's very heartening, and that's one of the things that keeps us going as well.
Yeah, so for the first, what, 15 months, 16 months of this project, it was all online,
Yeah.
interacting with people just through their Insta social IDs
Mm.
and having conversations. But since the past 15 months, like the second half, it's been a treat to meet some of these people face to face. And on both ends, like we've been delighted to meet readers, they've been delighted. Okay, it's not just books on the profile,
It's
they're like
actually
actual
real
people
people.
who
Right,
read.
exactly. I mean, that's the feedback that any creator looks forward to, or any organization or any startup looks forward to, right? How is it working for the people they're addressing to in general? So that's something that I wanted to know. And my final question is, Nandini, you've spoken beautifully about this reading slump, and all of us go through this at some point or the other. So what happens, even for voracious readers as well, like I am a fiction lover. So whenever, what happens with me is, when I start reading a nonfiction book, either it gets too complicated for me, which is where I kind of give it up, or I just don't find the interest after a particular point, and then I give up. And what follows is probably a month or two of not reading anything. Have you thought about, just certain bullet points, or easy hacks that you could guide your readers about how to get rid of this slump and sort of come back?
So personally, I had been in a slump for a few years because I was working in startups, and I mean, you should know it's quite chaotic and quite stressful.
Yeah.
So I would read articles, yes, but I found myself not reading enough books in a year. And it kind of made me, because even I'm a fiction reader, and I missed it.
Correct.
And once I signed up for the project, that's when I started realizing that if you're not able to finish a book, or if you're at a point where you're stuck, it's
Mm.
actually perfectly okay to put it aside. Because sometimes we feel guilty that we've not finished it, and maybe we should, and all of that. But I feel like in the world of books there are no shoulds. You should read what gives you joy, and sometimes a book that's recommended by a lot of people may not be your cup of tea, and that's
Mm.
perfectly okay. I mean, something else could be interesting for you. But the key is not to think of it, like we mentioned earlier, not to think of it as a race or a competition. Like, it does not matter if you put that book aside. Sometimes what happens is you revisit it a couple of years later also, and then all of a sudden it starts making sense.
Mm.
So I think that's a better way to approach it when it comes to a reading slump. And like I said, the one page a day thing works wonders, like, to be very honest, because it
Ano-
worked wonders for me.
Another hack which works well is pick collections of short stories, essays, poems. So Ray Bradbury, who's like a legend in itself, he once told a class of writing students how to write better. And it holds for anyone who wants to develop a reading habit as well. He said, for 1,000 nights, before you go to bed, read a short story, a poem, and an essay without fail. And that can help anyone who's facing a slump, or if you've picked up a book which wasn't your cup of tea, just to
Mm.
cleanse your palate, you could pick up a collection of short stories, dip in at any point, or essays. So I was reading this lovely book called The Girl Who Ate Books: Adventures in Reading by Nilanjana Roy.
Okay.
It's a collection of essays which she's written over the course of 15 years about the books, the journey in the world of reading for her. So she's an established columnist since a couple of decades and a novelist as well, it's a treat to dive into her mind little by little and
Hmm.
still have a few sections left. But 80% of the book is something which I've read. And since each piece is individual, you could, just read it in entirety by itself. So, nonfiction like this doesn't get talked about as much as the other
Right.
kinds, which get talked about way too much. So we won't talk about it. So, yeah,
True,
that
true.
helps.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that does help. And so excellent with this. Thank you so much, Nitin and Nandini, for your time. I'm sure you've inspired a lot of people to get their journey into building this sustaining reading habit. For those are not sure which platform to use, which is the appropriate platform for your work, stack.me is the place for you. And I would also like to plug in this wonderful feature that we've come up with, which is Picto, which is powered by one of the best AI driven image generators. Picto can help you create images based on simply the words you provide. You no longer have to look for generic images for your stories, posts, or poems. You can just create your own at stack.me/picto. And thank you, everybody, again for joining. See you guys in the coming weeks with a different topic and a different creator. So, till then, have a great week. Thanks to Nitin and Nandini once again. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Sure.
Thank you.
And we hope to see you as part of the Readers of 42.
Absolutely. I've already noted down the method of becoming a Readers of 42. So,
Yeah, it's the standard procedure at Stack.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
thank you for
absolutely.
making our lives easier.
Yeah.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Anytime. Thank you for
Thank
choosing
you.
Stack.
Cheers.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cheers.